Are we live? We are live. Good morning. This is Joel, and this is Faith Filter, otherwise known as Christian Perspective. And we are talking all things California this morning because I know you guys are just itching and to hear more about what's happening on the left coast. See if we got anybody in the comments here. Nobody's shown up yet. But I'm living in California, living the dream, right? That's what they say. The California dream is kind of like the American dream on drugs. So I'm going to bring up something here and go. Nobody's coming to the comments yet. Michael's probably running overtime again. So let me bring up this here out of the stage and get you going here.
Silicon Valley's wealthiest residents are once again threatening to leave California, this time over a proposed state wealth tax. Now, the proposal would impose a one-time 5% tax on the assets of California residents worth more than $1 billion. It would require residents to report their total net worth, including property, investments, businesses, and other assets, so the state can tax overall wealth, not just income. Critics warn it is a slippery slope, saying that, like the income tax, it'll grow over time and could eventually sweep in the middle class while expanding government power over private savings and property.
I mean, the whole thing is so infuriating. We already pay the highest taxes in the country. We already have massive, bloated, bureaucratic government spending. They've doubled the budget of the state of California in the last 10 years. Is everything twice as good? No, it's all worse. The last time they did this, they said there'd be they put an extra band of income tax on for high earners. They said it was temporary. They've just re-extended it for another 10 years. It never goes away because they're addicted to tax and spending. And by the way, most of the money will actually go to the unions in the form of pensions and making up for all the shady dealings that they've got there.
Now, if the measure qualifies for the November ballot and is approved by voters, it would apply retroactively to anyone who lived in California as of January 1st, 2026. Silicon Valley's wealthiest residents.
All right. So you picked up what they're laying down. Okay. Lucas is here. Good morning. AC, good morning. So that's the situation we're in now. And it's just a constant thing you have to go through when you live here. And again, I was talking to my neighbor the other day. We were talking about these kinds of things. And we were standing in January, the middle of January, on an absolutely perfectly blue sky. We were standing in shirt sleeves in our neighborhood, our really nice neighborhood with palm trees, and we're just it's such an impossible situation to believe that a paradise like California, and again, as I always say, the paradise of California is on the coast, within 20 miles of the coast, and oh, here we go. 2026, the year of fraud awareness. Okay. Blaine Scott, welcome. Yeah, that's a good, yeah, it just might be. And everything that Trump has done in Minnesota, uncovering the fraud there, boy, is there there's more fraud. I don't know how many times bigger California is than Minnesota, but there's at least that many more times corruption. I was doing just trying to narrow down what I want to talk about today, because it is really good. A good label you put on that is that it is fraud awareness. All of a sudden, everybody is being forced to acknowledge and be aware of the fraud that they continually vote for. And it's funny that they're not going to stop. It's become, as much of the California lifestyle is what you've got, beach going or casual or driving everywhere is a lifestyle, motorized society. all the things you can say about the California lifestyles. One of the aspects of California lifestyle is you accept corruption and you actually vote for it, because the California identity is becoming more and more and more this progressive, anti-American, anti-Western, anti anything that would have been considered normal 40 years ago, is now not only something people would say, no, we've kind of moved beyond that, or, things were bad back then. No, this is like a complete rejection of everything that has built the modern life that we live. And we somehow think that if we can, I always use the analogies of, over the years, people have been chipping away at the foundation of our society, right? That's always been something that people have said, and the idea is that little by little, you just chip away the foundation. Nobody notices at the time because you're just taking tiny little chips out of it. But if you take enough chips out of that over time, the society will collapse. And that was an analogy people use all the time. But about 10, 15 years ago, we started realizing they're not chipping away at the foundation. They're taking sledgehammers to it. They're taking jackhammers to it. They're taking sledgehammers to the bearing walls of our society. And it's seen now as a virtue. And even though the people that most Californians vote for are obviously corrupt, and everybody knows that they're corrupt. Think of the LA fires. Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, being out of the country, even though she knew exactly what the situation was. Gavin Newsom standing there, and a homeowner, this lady running up to him and said, Governor Newsom, can you tell me that, you said this is happening. You said they're on the way. You said the water's available, or whatever it is. And Newsom just pretended to be on a phone call, and he was so obviously not on the phone call. And the lady said, can I listen to the phone call? Oh, it just went dead. This obvious lying, this obvious incompetence that's right in front of everyone's face. And yet those same people that suffered in their fire, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, most of them voted for these people. And most of them will, if not vote for these particular people, they will vote for people of the same party and the same political persuasion, who will do exactly the same kind of thing. We get the government we deserve. And here in California, something about the sunshine, something about the lack of struggle with weather, makes us think that maybe we're guilty for having such a wonderful state to live in. And it's a psychological thing where we're secretly self-destructive, because everybody knows how corrupt California is. And if it's not whatever Trump is going after, if it's not welfare fraud or the learning center daycare funding fraud, it's something else. And I know that in my research, I came up just between homeless spending alone and COVID relief, which is another really, really corrupt thing that's going on. Nobody knows where the state of California has spent $24 billion in the last 5 years to ease homelessness. And if you've been anywhere in California, you know that homelessness has only grown. The problem has only gotten bigger. And in COVID relief, they can't find $40 billion worth of COVID relief. In LA alone, the LA fire relief funds that they had and the funds that were raised by a concert, $100 million. Nobody can account for where it went. It certainly did not go to the victims of the fire. And so, and this is just a tip of the iceberg. There's just 3 things I found, which is a total of basically $65 billion on those 3, really mostly just those 2, throw in the fire for a local story. And you've got California. And on top of the corruption, there's just out and out greed. This billionaire wealth tax And if they just described it in the video. So not only are they taxing income, that's not enough. They want everybody in the state to give an account of everything that they've invested in, all their properties, retirement funds, anything you own. They're going to add up, get a value of it, and tax you 5% of that. So if you're a billionaire, but the thing about billionaires, and you've heard it, and California has lost $1 trillion worth of wealth from billionaires who see this coming, who have the resources to get out quickly. A billionaire can go to Texas, can move everything. I just recently saw something where someone was saying billionaires can move to Puerto Rico. They can move to the Cayman Islands. They can get a passport just like that. They can have their high-priced accountants and lawyers set it up to where they have residence somewhere else. And let's see. And we have some comments here. Do we actually want to know how far that Dominion and Smartmatic rabbit hole has gone? That's interesting. Cognitive dissonance is an amazing weapon. Yes, you're right. And the most corrupt states have those blasted vote counting machines. Yeah. Although I really, from just the state of my neighbors around here, I don't think they need that corrupt voting machine factor here in California. People will vote for this. People have voted for this. They would rather vote for this than admit that their lifetime of progressive awareness and wokeness and voting and supporting, this kind of postmodern, post-Christian lifestyle has been a complete disaster. That's too much, as it says, cognitive dissonance. They just don't want to hear about it. They don't want to face the consequences of how they themselves have voted. And again, this didn't happen overnight. This has become a culture. Hollywood has propagated it. The media has propagated it. And the people behind the wealth tax, I found out is a familiar entity to me. It's the SEIU, Service and Entertainment International Union, I think it's called. And they're a huge public sector union around here. And years ago, I was poll watching on an election in our neighborhood, and this really, really large man was within the perimeter of the voting, the polling place with an SEIU jacket on, talking to people, very boldly as they walked up to get them to make sure that they were voting or to encourage them to vote the right way, completely breaking the law, and nobody was stopping him. And, this is the thuggishness. This is the power nature of California politics. It's union driven. And this is who's driving this wealth tax. And they don't care about the long-term ramifications of it for everyone else. So they're pushing this. And of course, the state legislature is going to go along with it. Newsom has said that he's against it. But when it's passed, he will sign it because he's in the pockets of the union, just like everybody else. So this is what we're facing in California. And like I said, the billionaires can leave, and they have. $1 trillion worth of wealth has left in the last month. So whatever amount they could tax on that, 5% of $1 trillion is what? $500 billion? I'm not sure. Is it either 50 or 500? So that's how much they've chased away that they were targeting with this billionaire's tax. So where are they going to get that? They were counting on that. So they're now, next thing you know, it's going to be a millionaire's tax. Well, if you're in California and you're just a working schlo like me, you might be a millionaire. If you bought your house, if you're an older couple that bought your house 40 years ago and you paid off your mortgage and that house was maybe worth $80,000 back then, it might be worth $1.5 million now. And guess what? You're a millionaire. And that goes into your net worth. That figures into your net worth. And so then you will get taxed 5% of all your wealth. And say you're worth $2 million. Well, 5% of that is $40,000 that you have to cough up, but you don't have that. You don't just have that lying around. You can't just, you're probably going to have to sell your property, or you're going to have to sell your stock. Say you have stock, say you have a 401k, say you have retirement savings. It's been said that in order to retire in California at the age of 65 until you die, you'll probably need about like $3 million in the bank, $3 million in a retirement fund just to live out your retirement. Who has anybody that has that? That's to live out your retirement at a reasonable middle class rate to pay the cost of living in California, which is astronomical. Well, that's going to go into the calculation of your net worth. And you're going to owe $80,000, right? No. Yeah, something like that. If you're worth $3 million, $150,000, is that what it is? I don't, nobody has that. You'll have to somehow sell some of your assets just to give this 5% to the California government. And it's not like that's the only tax we pay here. That's just the wealth tax that they're going to add on to the property tax and income tax and gas tax. Everywhere you turn in California, you are taxed. So the billionaires are fleeing now, and it's, if $1 trillion worth of wealth can flee in 1 month, that shows you how mobile billionaires really are. They can just pick up and leave, or they might even leave their house behind. And they did it before January 1st because they have high-priced accountants and high-priced lawyers that can see this coming. And they were advised, if you don't want California to take a huge chunk out of your wealth, you better go before the first of the year. And it looks like they did. But for people like me and people like my neighbors, we can't do that. We can't, all of us can't pick up and leave in a month. We've got kids in school. We've got houses. We've got mortgages we've got to pay. We got, we just can't, let alone can you even get a U-Haul to go out of the state. That's another thing that's popular here in California, or something that is well known, that to get a U-Haul to go out of the state is almost impossible. You can get any U-Haul to come into the state. If you're in another state, you can get a U-Haul to move to California, no problem. If you're in California, it's 50-50 or less that you'll even be able to find a U-Haul type trailer to leave California because so many people are leaving. Here's the question. Had to ask it, AC, didn't you? Will you leave Cali ever? I have left a couple times to leave California. My wife is from the Midwest, and she could probably very easily leave because she would know how to live in another place besides California. But I just looked at, I was looking at all the snowfall that was over New Year's and everything. And lately, I'm pretty sure the one place I did live leave California for was Washington State back in the 90s. And I was teaching up there, and I was living north of Seattle in a town called Linwood. And there were days I woke up to go to school early in the morning, and I had to go out and scrape ice off the windshield of my car. And I'm telling you, for a kid from California, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know this to me was a shock. And so dealing with weather, they told me up there to watch out for black ice, the famous watch out for black ice. Well, because you can't see it. Well, if you can't see it, how am I supposed to watch out for it? Well, they said, well, you'll know it when you hit it. Okay, so I'm not supposed to watch out for them. I'm supposed to be ready for hitting black ice. And then what happens? Well, your car will start to slide. And then what happens? I don't know. We went back to the Midwest about 10, 12 years ago to visit at Christmas. And back then they had something called the polar vortex came in. And we were in 40 degree below weather. And I did not know what to do. It was something I had never encountered before, having to get around. The flights were shut down. We couldn't get out. We couldn't go anywhere. I didn't know how to drive in that kind of weather. My son and I were trying to back out the car, to dig out the car from ice and snow in 40 degree weather. And I literally thought I might die. So will I leave California ever? I don't know. They might force me out. And where I would go, I don't know. I probably would have to go somewhere in the southern regions of the country just for warmth's sake. Although if I went to Texas, I have family members in Texas, and they talk about ice storms. There was an ice storm that shut down the grid in Texas a couple years ago, right? I would not know what to do in that situation either. So I'm a spoiled California kid. This is all I know. This is my home. So yeah, Florida, Texas, Arizona. We have looked at properties in Arizona. My wife and I did a few years ago when we were over there. I have some property there, commercial property, apartments, and we did look around Arizona at one point. So yeah, that might be the most likely place that we would go if we did. Our neighbors talk about it all the time. I was talking to my neighbor the other day, and they were talking about, they maybe got 5 years, and they're probably going to go to Texas. So like I said, I have family in Texas. My wife has family in the Midwest. So our daughter just got married and might move up to Oregon somewhere with her Oregon husband now. So, yeah, I don't know. Stay tuned. You may hear one day on this show that I have up and left California. But like I said, it's always been my home. It's all I've ever known. I'm in San Diego County, there's just no better place to live in the country. And it would be very difficult to leave. But, at some point, you've got to realize that you're a target. When you live in California, you're a target. You're a cash cow resource that the state government and local governments will try their very hardest to squeeze the most cash out of. People talk about greedy 1%ers. I'll tell you, there's no more greedy entity than the California government, unless that might be the federal government. You want to talk about greed. These are people that are addicted to other people's money. And, the old canard is socialism. The problem with socialism is you always run out of someone else's money. And that's what's happening. They're going to bleed us dry. So there may be if we stay too long, there may be a time when we realize we can't leave. We don't have the resources to leave. We're stuck. So let's see. Climate change, weather modification, another weapon. I've got to go walk my dogs before it rains. So, but see, here in California, I was walking my dog last night, and like I said, without even a jacket. It's just, there's nothing like it. There really is nothing like California. The coast, like I said. And California, I always say, I'm sure you guys have heard before, California is not divided north and south. It's divided east and west. If you go into the interior counter of California, into like the Fresno, Bakersfield, even, San Bernardino areas of Southern California, there's a much more conservative vibe to it, because these are people that don't live on the coast. They're not affluent. They work hard. They have to work hard. They know the value of money, and they're self-sufficient. And again, self-sufficiency is a conservative trait. Dependency and trying to gain resources to keep people dependent, excuse me, that's a progressive mindset. But those people, there's not very many people in the middle of California, and there's certainly not in the deserts. So there's just not enough of that, excuse me, that self-sufficient vibe here in California to overcome the progressive vibe of the coasts. And that's just the way it is. Wasn't always that way when I grew up. California was always a Republican state. San Diego was always the last Republican city and county. That went blue back in 2018, and it's been downhill here ever since too. So you see what you got. I know, Joel, I was born there, but I had to leave. I truly miss it. I know I can visit my home state when I can. Yeah. Where were you? I'd be interested to know where you were in California. Because, the area I live in, northern San Diego and eastern San Diego, are conservative areas, mostly because there's a big military presence. So in San Diego County, there's several military bases, Navy and Marines. Camp Pendleton, just north of us, is a huge Marine base. And but like I said, there's just not enough of us. And it's getting harder and harder. They're making it harder and harder to stay. And they're imposing more and more taxes and more lifestyle type things on us. There's just a tremendous pressure for conservative people to abandon their principles or compromise their principles or suffer the consequences of their principles. I know that there's a ministry in San Diego that tried to move into my city in northern San Diego, and they set up an office here. But the mayor of my city said that if they came to the city, they'd have to jump through all kinds of progressive type hoops on lifestyles, and you kind of fill in the blanks. I don't really want to give away where I'm at, but and they had to pull out. The ministry had to pull out because they said, we're not doing that. We're a Christian ministry, and we're not going to jump through those hoops. So they opened up an office, and within a short amount of time pulled it out, because that's just the way California is. So let's see. I was always at Huntington Beach and Bolsa Chica Beach on the weekends. It was just beautiful. Yeah. Orange County beaches, man. That's like San Diego. The whole coastal vibe in California is just, you just can't beat it. And so like I said, that's where I grew up. That's how I grew up. Back then things were sane. It was governed by people of my father's generation, the World War II crowd, the Depression crowd that knew the value of things. And but slowly over time, the Hollywood vibe and the media vibe just took over the whole state. And that kind of worldview, that kind of mindset, that, people's wealth, it's not something that they've earned and enjoyed. It's something that the government can come in. It's a resource that government can harvest at the expense of the people that they're governing. And that's their worldview. That's their mindset. And they're not going to change. Losing these billionaires is not going to affect it. They're just going to probably go after the millionaires. And who knows who's a millionaire these days. So that's it. That's half an hour. Again, it went by quickly as always. I will be on with Ben tomorrow. So I will see you guys then. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.